I'm Melanie A, and this is you now living life after a cancer diagnosis, giving yourself permission to change. And this is me as a 6.5-year triple negative breast cancer survivor, and thank you. And I want to share with you some of my story, some of my journey, some of it symbolic, some of it metaphoric, and how I've been giving myself permission to change. But first, we need to dissect a few definitions. Permission is the right or ability to do something that is given by someone who has the power to decide if it will be allowed or permitted. Change, there are a lot of definitions, but a few that stand out for me are to make radically different, to put fresh clothes or covering on, to put on different clothes. And then cancer, Merriam-Webster defines as a malignant tumor of potentially unlimited growth that expands locally by invasion and systemically by metastasis, an abnormal bodily state marked by such tumors, something evil or malignant that spreads destructively. So how do you give yourself permission to change when you've experienced a destructive invasion? First, my invasion. On November 21st, 2008, at 11:54 a.m., I received the call that I had invasive ductal carcinoma. It was 6 days before Thanksgiving, a month before the Christmas holiday, and a month before my 39th birthday. I was a married mother. I had a 19-month-old daughter and a 4-year-old son. And I thought, I should be out planning for the holidays, and instead, I'm on this phone getting this devastating news. And I felt powerless because cancer started to invade every aspect of my life. Finances, emotionally, physically, spiritually, relationships that I had, they were all invaded, and everything was in the context of cancer, and I felt powerless. So it took me some time before I could really come to terms. I'm somebody who likes to write. I don't journal every day, but I'm somebody who likes to document things that happen in my life. But it took me a really long time to journal and write about my diagnosis and my treatment. And about 6 months into my treatment, I decided to write something down. And as I was writing it, the message started to become clear about my journey and what my new normal could or should be. So I wrote this journal entry on Mother's Day 2009. As I said, it was approximately 6 months after my diagnosis. And it was particularly difficult for me to write this journal entry on Mother's Day because I had lost my own mother 18 years prior to breast cancer. I'm a 5th-generation breast cancer survivor. I carry the BRCA1 gene mutation, so I'd been around cancer most of my life. But it was really difficult to write this on Mother's Day, thinking about having lost my own mother to breast cancer. But I sat down and I wrote, I haven't written since I was diagnosed, have not had the wherewithal to put pen to paper. Maybe because it's been so surreal and I've been so disoriented at times that I thought if I didn't write, it's not real. But alas, it is very real. It has been a long and difficult road, at times incomprehensible and unfathomable. They say that that doesn't kill you, only makes you stronger. What choice? I want to live, but who said I wanted to be stronger? They also say that God doesn't give you more than you can handle. But how do you know when it's the breaking point and you can't handle it? It's like being on an island, not the beautiful tropical paradise, but the most lonely and isolated place on earth. A place inhabited by only me. A lot of times, I miss the old me, but I'm starting to embrace the unapologetic side of the new me who will teach my kids to live an authentic life, true to their passion, unafraid, unashamed, and free, truly happy. So I wrote this journal entry, as I said, 6 months into my diagnosis, but this would not have been possible if I had not had a defining moment. And I had this defining moment about a couple months after my diagnosis, midway between my first and second chemo treatments. Because of my family history and because I was triple negative, because I carried the BRCA1 gene mutations, my medical team and I had evaluated and researched options, and we decided that the best option for my long-term survival would be a bilateral mastectomy, which would be prophylactic in my right breast, 16 rounds of chemotherapy, reconstruction, and a prophylactic bilateral oophorectomy. So as I was going through my first treatment, in between my first and second chemo treatment, as my doctors told me, my hair started falling out. I started seeing it on my pillowcase, I started seeing it on my coat collar. It was during the winter time. And so I decided I probably should go home and cut my hair short so that I could maintain short hair through the rest of my chemotherapy and my treatment. So I went home one afternoon and I proudly cut my hair into a short style, and I sat and admired myself in the mirror because I thought, this is a pretty cute style and I could maintain this through the rest of my chemotherapy. So I jumped into the shower to wash my hair, and it all washed down the drain. And I realized at that moment, that's where this warning sign came up. My triple negative breast cancer diagnosis, I'm standing in the bathroom, I was bald, naked, and alone. And washing this all away made me realize that I was really, really sick, and that the change that was in my life now, the uninvited change, was very, very real. And as I sat there, this is how I felt. Like a blank canvas, like there was nothing there. I felt powerless. And so I thought about that moment, and I thought about what it meant to be standing there outside of the shower naked. And I replayed that moment of me so many times, bald, naked, and alone. And I thought about so much that had been stripped from me. But I said, maybe it's time to make some decisions for myself. I've been dealing with so much of this uninvited change. Maybe it's time for me to make some changes on my own. And it was time for me to make some decisions about stripping away some other things so that I could move forward and define my new normal. But I had to confront the reality, and with this reality is the good, the bad, and the ugly of looking at everything that's being stripped away. So the bad is, what else has been taken from me? You spend so many financial and emotional resources to survive. So my finances, any bit of savings that I had ever worked for was gone. I looked at who else was taken from me. Relationships dissolved. Cancer, they say, can be the great equalizer, and there will be friends and family who will walk and some will run away. And so I said, how much is gone? And I started calculating all the things that were gone. And I said, why do I feel like I've been thrown into a fire pit? And then I looked at the ugly. The ugly was, I'm here, I feel bald, naked, and alone, but I'm ready to make some changes on my terms. But I realized not everybody is going to support you. Some people will tell you, stop talking about it. You keep talking about it, you're giving it life. Stop being a cancer patient, get over it, let it go. It's over, but it's never over, as we know. And then I realized how hard it would be to make some changes. It's a dynamic process and not a static moment. It can be an up all night, cry all day process. And the other thing I realized is that I no longer had the luxury of time. I wanted it to be an immediate process. I wanted it to be something that happened overnight because I knew that time was not guaranteed. So I had to balance wanting the immediacy of change with understanding that it was going to take some time and that it was a process I had to work through. So the first thing I had to do after I got naked was I had to reacquaint myself with my power. As I talked about earlier, one of the definitions of power, of permission, is power. So after undressing myself, I had to say, take off everything that weighs me down, everything that literally, physically, and emotionally, and spiritually weighs me down. And then I had to think about, it's time to get dressed again. I think I need to wear something new. I think it's time for me to make some decisions on my own terms. Now I decide. My decision, my terms. I decided that this is not how I envision life after cancer. Living mediocre just ain't the answer. I felt like Humpty Dumpty up on that wall, but I refuse to be defined by my fall. So this would be my middle finger to cancer. So I had to reflect on, how do I get reacquainted with my power? And just like I kept reflecting on bald, naked, and alone, I reflected on all the things that I had done that truly showed how powerful I was. I had braved my diagnosis and a bilateral mastectomy, the beginning of reconstruction. I was fighting through chemotherapy, including AC, which is appropriately known as the Red Devil. And I also examined some real permanent scars, some reminders. This is just one of my scars. I have many, but this was one that I no longer wore with shame, but one that I wore with pride, because it symbolized that I had the power to keep moving and to define my new normal. So as I thought about this change, I kept replaying all these images, naked, bald, alone, getting reacquainted with my power, and I realized it was time to get dressed, symbolically that is. And I thought about what I would put on. So I grabbed some confidence. I draped myself with determination. I threw on some energy. I added some courage, and I stepped out beautifully adorned with some faith. So change, defining my new normal, I decided that I had to make changes in so many areas of my life. First, I had to change how I treated myself. And that meant that I had to make myself number one at all times. It didn't mean that I treated anyone lesser. It just meant that I had to become the best person that I treated in my life. It also meant that I had to change how I treated others. No one who did not give me their unconditional love or support deserved my priority. I can still love you from afar, I can still pray for you, and still have good feelings for you in your life over there, but you didn't deserve a front row to what was happening to me now. I had to change how I spent my time. As I said, we no longer have the luxury of time, so I had to change how I spent my time and realize that I had to stop focusing on manufactured obligations, things that I felt I have to do this, I should do this. And I had to change where I spent my time. I no longer wanted to spend my time in places that had a lot of negative energy or places that were unsupportive. And I had to change how I looked at myself. I no longer looked at myself as a frail or weak person fighting breast cancer. I had to look at myself as the strong and beautiful model of strength that I was, and I had the scars to prove it. Thank you. So, I'll ask again, how do you give yourself permission to change when you've experienced a destructive invasion? First, you gotta get naked. You gotta take off everything that's weighing you down. It may be friends, it may be relationships, it may be outside influences. Whatever it is, you gotta get naked and put it away. Let it wash down the drain. Then you have to reacquaint yourself with your power. You've gotta get in touch with all that's gotten you to this point. You have so much more that will take you through. And then you have to get dressed. You have to think about, what do I need to put on? What armor, what do I need to gird myself with so that I can have the best new normal? And you have to keep doing it. Thank you.